We do stupid astronaut tricks. We'll ball up in a ball. You have astronaut pins, and someone will push you down and knock all the other astronauts down. Is astronaut bowling? Is what we call it.
Most likely to be a director.
Most likely to be an engineer.
Most likely to be a journalist.
A doctor.
An astronaut.
A best-selling author.
Welcome to Most Likely To, a podcast presented by DonorsChoose. We talk to some of the world's greatest minds to find out how they became who they are today. If you can see it, you can be it. Our guest today is incredible. Leland Melvin is a former NFL wide receiver drafted by the Detroit Lions and the Dallas Cowboys. But when injuries kept him out of the league, he took a huge pivot and applied to work for NASA as an aerospace engineer. As an astronaut, Leland flew 2 missions to the International Space Station, including one on the shuttle Atlantis. And in total, he's logged over 500 hours in space. In today's episode, we talk to him about the toy that changed his life, the most surprising thing that happened to him while on a space mission, and his new graphic novel he wrote called Space Chasers. On Most Likely To, it's Leland Melvin. Hi, Leland. Are you ready?
3, 2, 1, lift.
Amazing. I've always wanted to do that with an astronaut. That's amazing. So let's start at the beginning because I'm so curious to know what you were like as a kid.
Oh, Janelle, as a kid, I was precocious. I was an introvert. I was a nerdy reader. I loved sports though, and played, football, basketball, and tennis. And my dad taught me a lot of different things to do, building, creating things. But I was a nerd. I was a little nerd.
An amazing athlete nerd, though, it seems, a student athlete at the same time. What did you think you wanted to be when you grew up?
When the moon landing happened in 1969, I was 5 years old, and I didn't see the transmission. I was holding the rabbit ears on the black and white television set. And so the next day we went outside to play astronaut, and I wanted to be Arthur Ashe, who was a black tennis player who trained in Lynchburg, Virginia. My dad talked about his intelligence, his athleticism, just everything that he did as an athlete, and I wanted to be like him.
And you grew up in Lynchburg, so that was not so far away from you, and you could see Arthur as this amazing role model, probably, as someone you wanted to be.
Well, he trained 5 blocks down the street from where I grew up on Pierce Street, but I never saw him.
Wow.
But I just heard about him.
Wow. That's really amazing. And I know that your parents were both educators, and it sounds like your dad had a huge impact on your life. Can you tell us a little bit about your dad?
Yeah, both my mom and dad, but my dad drove a bread truck into our driveway, $500, and he said, "This is our camper." And I'm like, "It says Marita Bread and Rolls on the truck." But that summer, we built this camper, built bunk beds, and he wasn't an engineer. He was a language arts teacher.
Wow.
But we figured out how to do it even before YouTube that shows you how to do everything. And we drove to Orlando, Florida to go to Disney World in that truck from Lynchburg, Virginia, like 8-hour drive. But we did it because we believed in ourselves.
And how did you first get into science? Was that the beginning of it all? Like, was there an experience you had that sort of opened your eyes and started you on this journey?
Yeah, this is where my mother stepped in and gave me an age-inappropriate chemistry set where I blew her living room up.
Wait, you said
And
age
there were
inappropriate.
Yes, I was probably like 6 years old, maybe 7 years old. And she gives me this chemistry set. I start mixing these chemicals and I blew it up. And I was like, my brain was activated to science because I'd already done that. And so that's what got that spark into chemistry and science. And my dad's bread truck episode gave me an entrance into engineering.
Wow.
And I didn't even know it.
Wow, literally a spark. But how did your mom react to this? I mean, it ignited something in you, but was your mom like, "Oh my gosh, that was the worst toy
Well,
ever"?
my mom was a home economics teacher, and she had this beautiful rug, and I burned a hole in her rug. So that day, she taught me physics when she used her hand and hit my butt and made a force and launched me over. F equals ma. So my mass was accelerated with her force, and that's when I really learned physics.
A lesson in physics. I love it. What was your first job ever. And looking back on it now, was there anything you learned about yourself from that experience?
Probably when I came back from college, my sophomore year, I taught tennis in Lynchburg, public city recreation tennis, and I got a paycheck. And I loved tennis; that was my favorite sport, and because of Arthur Ashe. And so that's where I learned how to make money and to help other people rise, teaching people how to play. And I think that was one of the most significant jobs because I had two friends that I met, and we're still friends to this day.
Mm,
So from that time, I learned a lot about, just getting money and being responsible and helping others.
awesome. So tell me how you got from, college and working as a tennis instructor to being drafted to the NFL and then to then pivot and become an astronaut for NASA. I'd love to hear how somebody goes through that trajectory to
Right.
get there.
I was in college, majoring in chemistry because my mother taught me that I could be a chemist at a very early age. And right before I graduated from college, I got drafted to play with the Detroit Lions. And I went to training camp and I pulled my hamstring pretty bad when I was running down the sideline and healed, but I played in some preseason games and then they cut me. And so when they cut me from there, I started graduate school at the University of Virginia in materials science engineering, learning how to build things and make things out of different materials. And then I got signed with the Dallas Cowboys for the next season. So I'm in grad school, and when I go to Dallas, they videotape the courses and mail them to me in Dallas. So by day, I'm catching footballs for America's team, the Cowboys, and at night, I'm watching VHS videotapes. That's my online learning is these videotapes.
Wow.
And I pull my hamstring the second time.
Mm.
That's the end of my football career, but I go back and get my master's degree, and then I go work for NASA, and I'm working at NASA in Hampton, Virginia, making optical fiber sensors, doing all this cool stuff in aerospace engineering. And this friend of mine says, "You'd be a great astronaut." I'm like, just laughing at him, like, "Yeah, right, me an astronaut." And this other friend of mine applies that selection to get in. He gets in. I don't apply. And I said, well, if that knucklehead can get in, I can get in. So I apply the next selection and I get in. And it was an amazing experience. You see the space station behind us
Yeah.
right here.
Yeah.
That's where I lived and worked for over 565 hours in space.
That's amazing. You took two missions and logged over 500 hours in space, which sounds just amazing. One of our students submitted this question.
Hi, this is Alal Mulatu from Manhattan, New York City. Could you please describe the training process you went through to become an astronaut?
Alalam, the training is incredible. You're doing all these different things, whether it's practicing to do spacewalks on the International Space Station in a 5 million gallon pool. You're flying high performance military jets. You're flying at 1.5 Mach, which is over 700 miles per hour. And I'd never flown an airplane before. Now I'm flying this jet all around the country. You do classroom training where you're learning how to learn the different systems on the space station, on the space shuttle. You're going out and talking to students and kids and people about the future of exploration. So it's all these different things. I went to Russia to learn Russian. I worked with the cosmonauts in Russia, the European astronauts in Germany. You go all around the world to work together with this international team to get the win, which is mission success.
Wow. And so, if you could fill in the blank, if you want to be an astronaut, you have to like blank. What would that be?
If you want to be an astronaut, you have to like learning and being a lifelong learner because we're always learning something new. Like if something breaks in space and we haven't trained for it, we have to figure it out. And we don't have YouTube up there to look at it. So you solve problems, you learn how to use your hands, your brain, your body, all these things integrated. That's why sports was so important for me because I always had to navigate my body on the football field, on the tennis court, on the basketball court, and you know how to use your body when you're floating in space. You're not tethered. Sometimes you have to tether yourself, but you're floating around. You have to figure out how to use your body in 3D space to control it.
Is athleticism important in aeronautics? Like, do a lot of astronauts, are they also athletes as well?
Yeah, I'd probably say like 85% of the astronauts have been athletes in college or in high school.
Wow.
Because your body, in gravity's pulling you down, so you're walking, you're running, you're jumping. But in space, if you push off with just a little push, you're now floating, and you can float and be out of control and knock over the computers and hit, sensitive equipment. So you have to really understand how your body works in that environment. And being an athlete on the ground, how when you jump and turn and move and run, how your body responds to forces, because those are forces on the ground. And so in space, you're using your hands to create forces, or your feet to create forces, to move you around in that 3D space, just like if you're jumping up in the air on the ground.
So, in some ways, even though your background seems really unexpected to become an NFL player and then switch to an astronaut, it's actually really amazing preparation, both in terms of the physical demands, but also because probably made you a really amazing team leader or team player with
Hmm.
your fellow astronauts, right?
Right.
Actually, so another question is, where did you experience any unexpected challenges when you were in training for your
I
missions?
did, Janelle. Yeah, I got in this 5 million gallon pool in this white suit. It's called the EVA suit. It looks like a cross between the Michelin Man and the Pillsbury Doughboy. It's like this, you're like floating around in this big suit, and you're underwater about 20 feet down. And there's a little pad that you put in your helmet. If you're the kind of person that has to clear your ears by squeezing your nose, you can't do that in the suit because you can't reach your hand in there. And so they forgot to put my pad in the helmet that lets you press your nose against it to clear, and I went completely deaf. I lost all my hearing. They
Wow.
had surgery. They operated on my ears. They couldn't figure out what was wrong with me. They said, "You will never fly in space." But I believed in myself. People believed in me. And I just kept going like the little engine that could. I think I can. I think I can. And eventually the doctor said, "Okay, you've got one ear." I got injured in this ear. So this ear was gone. This ear came back, but I still flew in space 2 times because they believed in me, that I didn't give up on myself, and other people didn't give up on me. So no matter what happens in your life, no matter what you go through, there's always some adversity, or something, some trauma, but believe in yourself that you can get over that and keep going, because I did it. And if I can do it, you can do it.
Wow, that's just incredible. I mean, spending 500 hours in space probably requires a lot of perseverance and grit. Where do you I guess were there things that you kept telling yourself to stay focused and to stay positive throughout that experience with your ears, but also throughout your time actually in space?
When I was a kid, my mother read to me every night 2 books: Curious George and The Little Engine That Could. And those 2 books have become like a mantra that I've always had inside of me, even as an adult.
Mm.
Because The Little Engine That Could, I think I can, I think I can, it was a small engine, pulled everything over the mountain. And Curious George, no matter what he did, no matter what trouble he got in, he always had that one person, the man in the yellow hat, who had his back. So as you go through your journey as kids, as adults, as whatever, make sure you have one person in your life that no matter what happens to you, they've got your back, and they trust you, and they believe in you. You believe in them. And always believe, have this little thing inside of you that says, if I just keep going, one more step, one more motion, I think I can, I think I can, and you will.
Mm. Amazing. What's the most shocking or surprising thing that happened to you while you were in space?
There are 2 things. One of the most shocking things is the hardest thing to do in space is to use the bathroom, because everything floats, and you can't train for that on the ground. So yeah, you get the picture. But anyway, the second thing that just blew my mind, and if you look behind me, this is a picture I took of, this is South America, Argentina, Chile, Peru, and I'm pointing to that thin blue line, which is our atmosphere. If you hold your thumb out, it's about a thumb width wide from space, about 250 miles up, and that's our life support system that allows us to breathe. And when you look at the ocean, you see all these colors that you've never seen before. I mean, azure, indigo, navy blue, blue. You can't describe. It's almost like 30 to 40 different colors of the hues of the ocean, and it changes you fundamentally inside when you see this. Your perspective changes because you go around the planet every 90 minutes while seeing a sunset and a sunrise every 45 minutes. So your perspective about where you fit in the universe and where you fit on planet Earth and helping other people rise like you just did is what happens when you go to space.
Wow, I love that. And that you're sharing it with everybody, that experience and that perspective that you
Right.
had and giving that as a gift to everybody else. It's amazing.
Especially, you guys out there that are hearing this, you are the next generation of explorers. And you need to start taking your rightful place as to how you would become that next aerospace engineer, that astronaut, or really whatever you want to do. I mean, you don't have to do those things, but if you want to do these things, start learning about the history of the people that have done these things, and read about them, and then also build things with your hands, create things. We're on our phones a lot, but mechanical, physical things are extremely important to building a space station or building a lunar or Martian habitat. We're going to go to Mars one day. We're going back to the moon with the Artemis program. So be able to ready to build things and create things and use this thing up here. It works really well.
When you were talking about how challenging it was to go to the bathroom, I started thinking, like, could you describe some of the just basic tasks or things that you had to do, and what made them different when you did them in space? Like, whether it was eating or cleaning something or doing a simple like walk. Like, what are
hmm
some of the things that were just so vastly different when you did them in space versus when you do them here on Earth?
That's a great question. Many of you play video games. When we train to do the robotics in space, it's like a 50-foot robotic arm that you grapple things and you move it around. That's actually the space station right there. I installed that Columbus laboratory. It's a $2 billion laboratory that was in the payload bay of the space shuttle, and I reached down and grabbed it and attached to the space station. Well, when we were training, everything was virtual. We didn't have any, physical representations of that laboratory. So training on the ground was on a screen. But when I got to space, it was 3D space. It's just huge things out there. So you had to actually figure out how to translate your brain from a screen into this real world space.
Mm.
And that's something that you guys are going to have to do, taking your video game experiences and going and using it in space. And that was for me, because I knew 3D space really well as an athlete. I could translate around. I could tether myself down so that I wouldn't move while I'm moving these hand controllers. Because if I moved a hand controller in the wrong way, I could run into structure. If someone was on the end of the arm and I'm helping them do an EVA, I could run them into structure and it could be a bad day.
Mm.
So understanding again how to use your body in this environment. Eating, I mean, you can float food to your friend's mouth, they can float food to you. You can actually suspend your food above your head and you can just push off and go up and float into your food. So that's something else we do. We do stupid astronaut tricks where we'll ball up in a ball. You have astronaut pins, and someone will push you down and knock all the other astronauts down. As astronaut bowling, is what we call it.
Did you have time for those type of shenanigans, or was it not appropriate to have fun and play games while you're in space as well?
You have to have fun.
Okay.
You work hard. You play hard. I had this. I had a water bag that has a straw in it. I was squeezing it, and the water was growing into a sphere, and we threw M&Ms in it. And then this is like a physics experiment because the M&Ms rode on the surface of the surface tension. We had physics, Newton's laws. One was hitting another one going through, and then I eventually floated it over to it, and I drank the whole thing, but I almost choked on these multiple M&Ms inside of this water bubble. It's on YouTube. If you Leland Melvin water bubble
Oh
M&Ms,
my
you'll
gosh.
see it.
Okay,
It's crazy.
we're gonna have to YouTube that. I know that when you were training to be an astronaut, there probably weren't a lot of astronauts that looked like you. So it seems
hmm
very important for you, from what I've gathered, to show young people, especially young people of color, that paths like yours can actually happen. So I know you're about to publish a graphic novel called Space Chasers. Will you tell us a little bit about the series and why you decided to write this book?
The first book focuses on this girl named Tia, who is, she doesn't go to school a lot. She doesn't have any parents. Her brother has her working in his auto mechanic shop. So she's a brilliant mechanical engineer. She can figure out how to build and create anything. And me as astronaut Leland Melvin is going around the country looking for middle grade kids to actually fly into space. And so Tia flies into space with these other kids, and my shuttle is damaged, so I can't go up, and they go up by themselves with my two dogs, Zoro and Rue, who are laying over here right now, and they save the day. They help build and fix the International Space Station. So it shows you what you can do when you train, when you work hard, and when you have people around you that believe in yourself.
Wow, amazing. Okay, so if a student is listening who is interested in aeronautics, what are one or two simple things that they could do during their school years in order to explore or prepare for a job in the industry? Whether it's like as an engineer or an astronaut or anything.
Right. I think the biggest thing, for aerospace or for, becoming an astronaut or anything you do is to get the repetition. Like, if you're studying math problems, do all the problems, not just the ones that are assigned, because that repetition leads you to being perfect and excellent. And in space, we don't have the luxury of not being perfect or bad things happen. And that could be on the ground too. I mean, airplanes, space shuttles, all these different things have a very small tolerance of failure. And so if you get in the mindset and the rhythm of over and over and over, like when you're practicing football, you're catching passes like 30 passes, 100 passes, you're doing 100 shots like Steph Curry. Steph Curry is sitting there shooting 1,000 free throws. And that's why he's the best free throw shooter and the best jump shot shooter in the world, in the universe, really. So that repetition, whether it's studying, whether it's exercising, whether it's whatever you're doing, that repetition will help you study and then get to the thing that you want to do with your life, whether it's aerospace or whatever it is.
I love that. Well, Leland, thank you so much for coming on our show. You are just truly humble and inspiring at the same time, and we are so grateful for you for telling your story with us.
And thank you, Janelle. And I'm a firm believer in DonorsChoose because we have to arm our teachers and students with all the experiential things they need to rise. So please, everyone out there, please donate to DonorsChoose.
Hey, thanks so much for listening. Make sure to click the follow button on your podcast app so you never miss a new episode. We are at Most Likely To Show on YouTube and at mostlikely2.show on Instagram and TikTok. Tag us in your posts about the show. This show is about exploring the journeys of the people you care about, so let us know who you're interested in hearing from by sending in your requests at podcast@donorschoose.org or DM us on Instagram